Welcome to another episode of Skeleton Crew, the podcast where we discuss key crew positions for any filmmaking set, ranging from pre-production to post-production. My name is Mark Farag.
I'm Joseph Boyle.
And here today we've got...
Rachel Cameron.
Rachel Cameron, local sound mixer out of the...
Tampa Bay area. I say the region, the Bay region. It's more like... I actually have been all over, down in the Caribbean, up as far as Maine, out at the Black Rock Desert, so... this traveling jobs don't come as much, but regionally, I'm all over the place.
Oh, great. Well, thanks so much for coming by today, Rachel. We're excited to have a conversation with you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So, Rachel, let's just start out. Can you give us a little bit of background information? You know, who is Rachel Cameron? How'd you get into sound? And maybe some of your background, something like that.
Yeah, I come from a musical family, and my mother was like, she played her guitar. They were folkies, you know, sort of before the hippies, but very into folk festivals. And my father had this reel-to-reel that I was always fascinated by. And the first place I actually saw meters working and him placing microphones. So, yeah, I guess I was around recording for my whole life, pretty much a very early age. So it just kind of grew out of that. I guess when I was in junior high school and high school, I was always bothering my friends to borrow their vinyl and dub it to cassette on my brother's Pioneer. He had this beautiful, here's a beautiful, Pioneer, like a CTF 650 or something with meters and blue lights everywhere. And I'd sit in front of that and dub all this Steely Dan and Electric Light Orchestra and all this old stuff. But yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So was it the technology that drew you to it, or just the ability to capture sort of memories or make your own? What was it about it that sort of drew you in?
I fell into it, so I went away from that for a very long time, and I got musical. I went to the University of Florida, and I hung around musical people there, and I learned to play the guitar, and I was very musical for a long time, but I didn't know what I wanted to do at the University of Florida. I kind of got to the 80-hour limit, and I'd already been through 2 or 3 majors. Originally I wanted to go into architecture, because my father was a builder. But I was like, geez, that's an office job. I am not into office jobs. So I thought about, computer programming is really neat. So I got into BASIC and started taking classes there. And I'm like, wow, that's going to be another office job. So I want to do that. Then as the story goes, I was just about to just quit for the summer because I couldn't handle it anymore, and I wasn't allowed to even enroll for any more classes when I walked through. It was Weimer Hall up there, and they have an enormous glass window where there was this TV head end for WRUF, I think it is. It was a TV and an FM radio station, and this enormous film chain right in the front window. And I was just fascinated by the technology again. So with what I had been through in the musical side, and the technology kind of sucked me in again. So I quit there, and I went to... I didn't want to be away from an educating environment. I started working back in Manatee County at the library there at the community college. And I found that they had films upstairs and a whole AV department, a switcher and cameras. So I got up there, finagled my way into cleaning their films and running their short circuit television programs. And because they had every room was wired with closed circuit. It wasn't short circuit, but closed circuit television was a big thing. But it was just its own little TV system. So on this big switcher, you could punch up whatever rooms, and you would play these VHS tapes to them on these enormous they had 20 Panasonic decks, all pro Panasonic decks. So from there, it just was I wanted to go back to school, and so I got experience working in production, and then I went back to school at University of South Florida, Fine Arts Film Program, and got my degree in filmmaking there, gravitated towards audio after that in a couple of jobs, and then found field production through a job at Burning Man. I went to Burning Man in '97 before, I guess it was big then, but that was pretty much a trial by fire audio job, but I was with friendly, cool people who sort of showed me what I needed to do, and I was, wired with an umbilical to the camera, and I carried a boom, and there was no wireless really, but Yeah, that was like a 6-day job out in the desert. It was where we were cleaning gear and we were in windstorms and dust storms, and the nights were very cold and the days were very hot. And I was like, that was way more fun than I'd ever had on any production job. And I kind of hoped they were all going to be as fun as Burning Man, and some of them have been.
That's a hell of a first gig to
Yeah.
dip your toe in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did like one sit-down interview before that for a friend, but after that, it was just like they had somebody already booked, but that person couldn't go. So I sort of fell into it because I was working audio at this local TV station, and I'd just gotten promoted to the manager of the audio department, and the people had actually done some production for that station too and knew me.
So how soon after this would you say you were like fully engrossed into the filmmaking world and doing professional gigs full time or on a consistent basis, like mixing and recording?
So work was spotty. I stayed working at that television station for a few more years, and work was spotty, and then it just started to fire. But it was still like, I'd say it was another 6 years. Then that's when the 04-05 hurricane seasons hit, and suddenly so I went to work for the state of Florida Emergency Operations. I've got all this experience. It really isn't like IMDb classifiable, but that was amazing, and that's where I really started thinking about like tactical audio, a term I know I didn't come up with, but I use it a lot, and I like to think it's my term, but it's one of the most I think that's an efficient way to think about audio, is tactically, because you really have a critical job to do it. It's do or die. You have to get in and get out. You have to stay out of everybody's way, and you have to really be low key and be maybe seen and just not heard. So it's
kind of ironic.
Yeah.
You have to be seen and not heard.
It is.
You want everyone else to hear what's going on there.
Exactly. I say that a lot. It's one of the things a lot of people in the audio, they probably scorn or disdain this comment, but I say audio should be seen and not heard. Like the department.
Sure, yeah.
And because we don't need to be loud, we should only come out of our corner when there's a real problem. And that's how most of my shoots are, is when they see me get up, they're looking at me, and they're like, okay, what do you got, or what is it? And I always approach with a problem and 2 or 3 solutions.
So what's that like, just going into like dealing with camera departments when a problem comes up? Are they accepting of audio, or are they like, get back in your corner?
I work well with egos. I actually like working with egos. And I guess, the audio department typically can be a fairly egotistical place too, but that's not me and that's not how I work. I would never want the job of DP or an AD. They can have it. That would seem like hell to me. I would, I would rather them lead the mess, because I can definitely get right in there and be the cog in the wheel and deliver and make sure that they have something that they can use, or we're gonna work out what the problem is and then get them something they can use.
Yeah. How often would you say you have the ability to sit in on the pre-production meetings and kind of express concerns or thoughts? Is it more, those seem more dedicated to the visual aspect oftentimes from what I've seen.
One a year.
Sadly.
One or two times a year. Usually it's a concerned, like people that are a really good, tight-knit little indie film that I'm going to do. So 1 or 2 just like commercial jobs have been that way, but most of the times I go in not knowing an awful lot, and I have to like surreptitiously sort of like glean my information from sitting at my cart and watching what's going on and figuring out who to ask what to. So
do you typically? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you: do you typically do your own booming, or do you have a boom operator? Do you kind of switch? What do you prefer overall?
I'm sort of in transition. So I have always just done run and gun, kind of like a OMB operation where I would boom myself. But more and more lately, I've got a couple of boom operators that I like working with, and I intend, my 10-year plan is to retire behind my sound cart and then just do like indie films and be the Sarasota, the Tampa, maybe the regional. I'd like to be the Sarasota go-to. There seems to be a void down there. But and I get a lot of work down there. So, and my name is well known down there, probably better than it is here. But I'd like to stay behind my cart eventually. I'm still, even though I'm getting old, I can still swing a boom and wear my kit and run. I mean, it's all great. I can still do it and I love doing it. But it sure is a great feeling when you've got somebody to cooperate with in the audio department, a boom operator, and then giving them the room and explaining, training them. My boom ops are pretty well trained to understand that it's their room and they make the decisions on what microphones and what they want to do out there. So, but it's hard to get them there, because they come in like, timid. They don't really understand that they're my eyes and ears out there.
Yeah.
So
When it comes to, let's talk a little bit about the breakdown of the sound department. So there's a boom op, ideally, and then you have what are the other key components? A sound mixer and then a utility and.
Yeah, I don't often get a utility. I have on some jobs, but the utility is like, if I get a utility, I'll start having them scribe for me and take time code notes and circle takes and make notes about noises and stuff like that. I love having utility, but the sound department is just typically a mixer, recordist, a boom op, and nobody else. If I get a utility, that is a really concerned production. Yeah. Sometimes it's just that they have somebody who can dedicate some volunteer hours and want to learn.
Gotcha. So can we talk about, I mean, there might be people listening that, I remember when I was younger, I never understood the term sound mixer. And it was just because I wasn't involved. I was like, oh, there's a sound recordist or something. Where does the mixing aspect come in?
Well, in the old days, when there was just one track of audio and one microphone out there, things were pretty simple. So the job, the task at hand was to ride those faders as he's cueing that boom back and forth and get them a mixed track that goes to, and that is the production track. As recorders have grown, we've got like 4, 6, 8, 10 tracks. Now we can ISO each microphone. The mix track is kind of like, it's still there. And a lot of mixers will send a mix track out. They'll try for a production mix to hopefully they don't have to, so that the re-recording mixer doesn't have to go to the ISOs and remix it himself. So it's getting to be the mix track is getting to be sort of an atrophied sort of vestige. Mm-hmm. I don't want to offend all my mentors, but I pay more attention. I do a mix track. I still do a left-right mix. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll use the right channel. I'll send that back into my DNS 2 and put in ISO a 6 track, but the left is like a dedicated mix track, and boy, it's hard to get mix tracks right. Yeah. I mean, very often I'll work out a mix track and then I'll just put over in notes, don't use this, go to the ISOs or use the ISOs for this one. So a mixer used to actually mix on site. Now we have re-recording mixers to do that.
Okay. So now, you would mix, let's say the boom becomes a wide shot, then you would mix in like a wire or something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I would mix a wire in, so I'd say like, the camera is on, the camera is actually on, like say it's on Mark, and I got a wire on the other guy. I might play around and mix the wire in, because if they cut right in the middle of the shot, that wire might be useful. Mm-hmm. It's hard to imagine all the different ways, especially when they get into like wide and tight shooting, all the different ways and what they're actually thinking of as an edit. In the old days, that was much easier.
Well, it sounds so much more dangerous in the old days, because you got to be mixing and make sure.
It really was. So things I think were a little simpler too, and the boom op was like a critical tool, because he had to really know the script and know even if somebody was going to interrupt and have that mic cued to that spot, Mm-hmm. So cueing that mic was critical. And in the old days, the mics were like the 815 is like this long. So had it way up in the air, and the pattern was extremely narrow. Mm-hmm. So like with my main dialogue mic, it's got more of a lobed pattern than a long, narrow pattern.
So if you were off just a little bit, they're off mic.
Yeah, it's off. You're off cue, and now the mixer is like, I can't hear it, so they might take it again. Mm-hmm. So
for a more high-end narrative project, is there a lot of rehearsal time where you can kind of get a sense of the volume of the people you're wiring or you're booming? I'm always curious.
Yes, rehearsals are great, and rehearsals are not just for the actors. They're absolutely for the whole bunch of us, But I mean, when that's why I'm like, if the boom, I'm training a boom up and he's in here, they're rehearsing. I'm like, you get out there and rehearse with him, because we basically have to all tango together.
Yeah. So it's really everything working together.
Symbiotically.
Right. And shoot the rehearsal is the worst thing to hear. Let's shoot the rehearsal. Okay. Well, you can count on that one being no good. Count on it, because we don't know what you're going to do,
Yeah, exactly.
But we'll, okay, let's shoot the rehearsal. Maybe there's a piece of that audio they want.
You mentioned this Cedar box earlier, the DNS2. For those who may not know, if I understand correctly, please correct me. I guess it's some type of active real-time noise reduction tool.
Yeah, it's like an AI device. It sort of learns what is the dialogue you're trying to get. DNS stands for dialogue noise suppression. So they've got a rack mount unit that's very expensive. I think it's 8 of them. To start off with, let me qualify by saying that this is dangerous territory.
Well, that's what I was curious about. Yeah,
you don't want to like re-recording mixers start really getting real antsy when they hear that we're out there affecting tracks like EQ and noise reduction and stuff. That is totally their realm, and I respect that. I don't get a lot of jobs, though, where there is going to be a re-recording mixer or that they have pluralize or a number of other things. Sometimes I have to ask, how are you going to post this? If they say, oh, we have a re-recording mixer, I don't worry about the DNS, and I just turn it off. But there are times when I'll be like, oh, boy, that noise is really in the background. It's pretty consistent. I'll just go ahead and run the 6-track just in case. And it's a scary tool to use. You can mess things up pretty quickly, pretty badly. So you go lightly with it and just reduce. You don't try to remove.
But that's a secondary track to the untouched track.
Right. They have I leave them an untouched track that they can do whatever they want with. Even if they didn't have a re-recording mixer or they weren't going to send it to audio post, if it's something really nasty, they could actually send it to Cedar, and Cedar will remove it on some really great gear they have. Those guys over at Cedar are pretty amazing. They're in Cambridge.
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, it may be kind of considered a taboo tool. It's my understanding that some sound mixers are a little nervous using something like that. Perhaps it gives an operator a little too much artistic license, some may argue, and the post side may not be too happy with such tools being utilized. So
they're right. Yeah, you can get reprimanded. So I will never actually just use that on a track where I don't give them the clean track too. And I'll offer it and I'll say this is, if a lot of times I'll practice with it because it seems like there's a fair amount of practice involved, like different noises and different sounds and things that come and go. It's learning every millisecond what is new to the back of the dialogue is what it's doing. It's picking out the dialogue, separating it, and reducing it. And you have several meters, and the meters actually are in the same meter, and they cross each other. You've got 2 thresholds, and it's a complicated meter to even get to understand. But I don't want to make this an ad about the
Sure,
DNS.
yeah.
But it's something that, I get on jobs where that's actually a useful item.
Yeah, well, that's good. So what are some of the other pieces of gear, brands, microphones that you like to use, generally speaking?
I'm a sound devices and electrosonics person. I don't have any Zaxcom, even though I'm probably going to get myself, I think I'm going to get a Sheps microphone. So right now I'm using I love my dialogue mic, which is an MK50. It's a very warm microphone, but I would like to actually step up, even though it's a little bit of a problem in humidity, and we have a lot of it here. I'd like to step up to the CMID. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big buy. But other than that, I'm all electrosonics with my wireless, and I'm all sound devices.
Gotcha. What brought you to those decisions? Like, are there certain aspects of these?
Yeah, I noticed
some people out there might not. It's a general filmmaking podcast, but Sound Devices is a company out of Wisconsin, and Electrosonics is out of
Arizona.
Arizona.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were just. That's what I like the build quality of the sound devices. Mm-hmm. And Electrosonics was just the first stuff that I actually bought. So I noticed a lot of people, like, there's 2 ways to do this. You could buy something that's not electro and work up to it by trying to get work that is that quality. But I don't believe in that. I think just do whatever you can to get the highest quality gear you can. Go into debt, borrow from, start it anyway, start a Kickstarter or whatever to get the most expensive gear right off the bat. Learn it, know it in and out, and go to town getting the best signal to noise ratio you can achieve with it.
And then you can get the jobs.
Right.
Yeah, to pay off that gear.
Because the gear isn't any harder to learn than the ASDN versions of it or the AKG versions of it. You just don't want to be able to say, you don't want to have to explain, because they'll ask you, the big heavy hitters will ask you, what are you using? And if I say ASDN, I probably wouldn't get the job. They know.
Right. Well, speaking of that brand recognition, it seems within the last 10 years or so, there are certain brands out there that have kind of democratized, filmmaking tools, made it much more accessible. It seems from the brief conversations I've had with certain sound mixers, some are all about it, some are a bit more concerned and think it's problematic and it could hurt their investment, hurt their livelihood. Where do you kind of fall into all this?
As far as
certain recorders, for instance, mixer recorders that are say a third of the price of sound devices, but maybe have very similar feature sets and even audio quality.
No, if it's $4,000, I like those preamps. I'm paying the $4,000. I just go get the money.
So does it concern you a little bit that companies like Zoom and such are releasing F8s that are
not at all. They're going to step up into I think what slowly has been happening is I've been watching the Zoom F4 and the F8 go up. They're gonna have to step up if they want to be in the same place that sound devices and Zacs are working. They're going to have to add, and I see them adding those features. There's new iterations of it all the time. Now you can name tracks and things like that.
But you don't necessarily think, or maybe do, that these products are dangerous to the industry, like say Zoom F4s and F8s, because it seems like some people are very polarized about it. I will never use this. This is a disgrace. This is hurting us. Some people are like, hey, whatever the tool is, if it gets the job done and it sounds good, I'm all about it.
I don't think so. No, it's the ear that's going to tell in the very end. It's always the ear that's going to tell. And if their preamps are quiet enough, I've had people tell me, just plug straight into the camera. Don't worry about recording on that. And I'm just like, but I know that's an Emira, and those are great preamps, but I've probably got better preamps here. But no, just do that. All right. If that's what they want, I'm happy to give it to them. I would advise against it or even give them files anyway. But no, I like to rely in the very final result on the ear. And I haven't really begun to listen to the other products yet. I'm happy. I mean, the ones that are way behind, or coming up on them, I will soon, though.
Yeah, and that's what we're recording on is a Sound Devices Mix Pre 6 for this, which has been great. I mean, I love Sound Devices. I had a 744T for a while, which is great.
It's those preamps that they put in, and they're really
it's so
transparent.
Cute. I mean, it's
very
so
tiny.
Cute. It's so cute. You just want to squeeze
adorable.
it.
I just want to Velcro it right here and all day long. Just you could wear it in a Molly vest. It's tiny enough,
Mix Pre 3 is even.
Oh yeah, it's even smaller.
It's pretty adorable.
Yeah, I've got an early Mix Pre D. That's the 6, right? So it's got an OLED. Meters on it now and everything. So cute.
I used to have the Mix Pre D as well, and I earlier on I was trying to build. It was when 702s and 744s were so expensive still to get, so I bought a Mix Pre D used, and then I was trying to sort of make it into a. I paired it with a.
Is it a Marantz or something?
Yeah, Marantz recorder because I had an AES out, so I was trying to make the Marantz recorder like a bit bucket, so it wasn't engaging the preamps.
Analog limiter.
Yeah, but
preamps,
it had some problems.
No. Okay.
But anyway, so I was on that train early on, and then 5-6 years later, they come out with this. It's so cheap and
It's
all built in
has
together.
Great sound. So
no, I'm tempted. I have an older Mix Pre, and I'm so tempted to get that just for tiny little jobs or super tactical jobs. So I'd like to get into eco audio, and really try true run and gun. So that would be the item I'd want to start with.
Yeah, definitely. So what have you been working on these days, Rachel?
Oh, being in audio, I love that it actually leaves me time to do other things, Gosh, I bet that. See, I've got my phone acoustically mounted to your microphone stand.
That's okay.
So I'm
It'll
sure
be
it
an
just heard
interesting sound for people. Like, oh, what's that sound? That's cool.
That was my phone, folks.
Yeah. Actually, sorry, before we get to that, I
Yeah.
wanted to get back to a little bit. When you started out, what was the gear like? You know, what was some of the pieces of gear that you were using? Was it Shure? Or?
It was Shure, and they got out of it right at, like, I started out with an FP33. So in the early days of the FP33 and the early days of the HHB DAT recorder. So like early 90s was when I was really starting to put my hands on some of that equipment, you know, and use it. It wasn't my gear yet. I got my FP33. God, when did I actually buy that? I think I bought that in 2002 or 3. So in the earlier jobs, I was either using somebody else's gear and cutting my teeth on that. There is a prominent National Geographic cinematographer locally who would, you know, that's where I started some of my real pro jobs, but he was bringing out his FP33 and early Electro 187s and VHS.
Would you say there was anything unique about those more analog products? I realize even today's recorders are using analog preamps, but was there a certain warmer sound? Sometimes I hear people kind of romanticize the older equipment and say there was something special about that equipment and the sound it produced.
I hear more of that in music with tube amps and stuff like that, and music production. Tube preamps and stuff are really good, but I really love the gear that we have these days. You know, the preamps are warm enough. There's enough we know how to like gauge for the headroom in digital. It's a little bit different than analog because the headroom winds up on the other side of the zero. But so we back it down and we approach zero in digital. But I mean, we just shift the headroom over to the other side, I guess. But no, I don't have any complaints. I think we've gone miles in the warmth. In the early days of digital recording, I think it was really they had to work on getting the warmth into it. But
Okay.
I think that has happened.
Seems great to have these tools that are a third or a quarter of the way. I'm sure your back and your shoulders are loving this new equipment on a long day.
Much lighter equipment too.
Yeah.
And I recently bought a new bag that is a tiny lighter bag. So, yeah. All of it's getting lighter with the SRBs and the SRCs being as light as they are. Because I started out with Electro 195s and 187s, and those big things were just huge. Just a lot of weight.
Yeah. And then the 416, this is what I'm using right now, has been around forever. So was that kind of just the go-to mic, you know, when you were starting out, or was there other?
It kind of was. You know, we wanted to get away from that as soon as possible because it has a narrow pickup pattern. It's good for outside, but it isn't really a microphone that you want to do dialogue. Sure. A lot of like movie dialogue with. It's great for news and stuff like that, and I have a bunch of them, but I don't use them as much unless I get stuck and like, oh gosh, I got to plant this over a door because they're going to walk in and deliver that line. Let me just clamp this over there and hope it works. But yeah, it's always been the go-to and the standby, I think. And I love my old 416s and my 415.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we were shooting a film last summer, and you know, you always hear about Shep's issues, you know, with humidity, but I always heard about it secondhand. So you never know, like, if people are just repeating these rumors and such online. But this mic did go down.
Did it?
I'm pretty sure it's because I went from my car into an air-conditioned environment.
Oh, the condensation.
Didn't give enough time to acclimate.
Yeah, so we had to switch over to this, but this was it was perfect.
Yep, Sennheiser will always be there for you.
Yeah. So.
I recently sold my 416, and I was a bit concerned. I got the one I'm using now, the Sonken CS3 and it seems pretty rock solid so far. I know it's not quite as battle-tested as a 416, but we'll see.
It's definitely quieter and hotter. It's like 7 decibels hotter. I mean, maybe my
I hear it's pretty gainy.
Yeah, I hear it's a little less forgiving, though, because that's part of the magic of it, the narrow pattern.
Right.
So, so far it's been great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm cutting it.
Awesome.
Yeah. So is your preference to work on, or what types of projects are your preference? I mean, this podcast is focused on films, you know, but then there's a lot of work that people do that's corporate and
I think
documentary and all sorts of different things. So do you have a preference?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I was in theater, and I've always been around like my parents and their theater and their troubadour friends. So I like the jobs that are camaraderie based, and there's nothing like being with like just stewing in this creative juices of an indie film for like 14 days where everybody is just like intensely working towards the same goal. And, that particular crew will never be together in that configuration again. Those are my favorite jobs, because there's hard times and good times, and there's this beautiful project that's born out of it, usually, hopefully. Yeah. So those kinds of jobs are the ones that really psych me the most. Even though they're hard, they're 12-hour days, and you end up with no clean clothes anywhere at the end of the whole thing, and your gear is all over the truck.
Yeah,
but it's just, I love to get into that, and I love to sit in my cart. And I feel like, even though I'm a participant, very often I feel like I'm just a bysitter and a bystander. I love to watch it happen, So it's fascinating to me. Just this, like, it's almost like military grade effort going in, Like people are just like,
that tactical sound that you
it's like they're going at it, and I'm just like, wow, this is great. Oh my God. Sometimes like I'll even like begin to tear up at a performance. I'm like, wait, you dumbass, you're working. You're not watching it. Stop it.
This is something Joe and I talk about all the time. We're amazed that any film is successful, that it's just done. Just so many aspects. People have no idea who aren't in this industry.
I know,
it's
and
incredible.
I would never want that job. So that's why I'm like happy to sit off on the sidelines and just watch it go and make sure that I can deliver my part.
Yeah. Is there any sort of consistent problem that you see on indie sets, that they're not focused on a certain element and they always have to be reminded? Or
Yes, there is a pet peeve. This is a pet peeve. I think calling shots there should always be a meeting before the first shot. Okay, we're going to call these shots like this because I've seen so many just ruined takes. Camera wasn't rolling. Audio wasn't called in the right order. So in the new kind of world where we're working in the post all this technology and digital age and so many tools, they're forgetting that there is a craft and there are reasons why things need to be done a certain way. But one of the things that I will sometimes even do after about like the fifth or sixth take where, okay, we just spun our wheels for that whole thing because somebody didn't get the right information. Let's figure out how we're going to call this. We're going to say like roll sound, then we're going to say, okay, roll picture, or we're going to make eye contact and we're going to know, and then we roll sound, we roll picture, and we do it like this. Then you know what I mean?
So you have to have an operation.
Yeah, I see. Like there's like been a couple of jobs lately where I went on to them, and that just wasn't heated, and it has to be like the same every single time. Everybody needs to know what to expect in the critical moment where we say go. So that's been one of the things that'd be like, okay, this is not going to go well. Roll, and then I see it. And
so have you had to insert yourself and say, hey guys, or is it usually the director, or do you whisper to the AD, or what does it look like?
It's always different depending on. I have to wait a while. I have to see if you step very carefully in a film set. So it's usually you understand the chemistry, why it's happening, what's going on. Say something if you can. Otherwise, just be on top of my job. If they're having other problems that are much greater than that, I'm not going to get in there and say that. But yeah, there have been times when I've been like, okay, stop. Let's all do them like this. All right. I actually have written it on the back of a little piece of paper, gone up to the AD who is new and say, do them like this and get it right every time. Oh, okay. And I'd see him like look at it a couple of times and put it in his pocket and go, okay, roll sound, roll picture, background, mark it.
Like they're crib notes.
Yeah, they're like crib notes. But it's been helpful to get that because it'll be frustrating for me because I got to go first. Sound should be the first thing rolling out the gate because you don't want 1 inch of picture rolling without any sound to go with it. You always want more sound than picture.
Oh, it makes sense.
Do you set pre-roll like on a recorder?
Yeah, I set up a 5-second pre-roll. Okay, so most of the times you hear them say, they probably wonder, how does she know to roll? But I'm cheating, yes. I set up a 3 or a 5-second pre-roll just in case I'm late, to the button. Sometimes I'll be running in after making an adjustment.
Sure, yeah.
Do you ever have the time to kind of have a conversation with the cam op or the DP and develop some type of relationship where you can cue each other across a scene? A lot of times it seems like some cam ops or DPs aren't necessarily too concerned where the boom placement is or vice versa. So I'm always curious about that. Anytime I've operated, I'm always trying to get my boom off. Just kiss the friend. Come closer.
Exactly.
Come closer.
I say, yeah, when they get looking at me funny, I say, no, well, if we're not living on the edge in the audio department, we're not doing our job. We live on the edge. And they go, oh, all right. Sometimes we dip in, but no, what I'll do is I'm good at befriending camera department, giving them what they need, sometimes helping them out if they need it, but yeah, I like to get with it. After a while, I'll sense who I can say, hey, what do I have for space? Show me if I don't already, if I haven't like peeked in behind them and seen what there is. But no, I enjoy working with camera department to get them what they need. And if we dip into the boom, whether we dip into the frame a little bit, it just sometimes happens. But I'm usually really good with figuring out what we need to do.
Is there any world that you won't get involved in sound-wise, like reality TV? I know that's kind
news. I don't want news. I don't really like. I don't actually. I'm picky, and I take what jobs I want to take, and that's a nice luxury, I realize. But the commercial world's kind of intense, and it's hard, and it's not quite like I don't feel like all my gear is built for the commercial world. Like I would need more context and maybe more patience. I'm a patient person, but like there's an awful lot of disregard for the sound op on bigger shoots. You have to really fight. And I work on smaller shoots. So like news, the commercial world, I love indie film. I love run and gun. I love doc TV, sit down interview, of course, which is like square one for most audio operators. But yeah.
Yeah. So just for people who don't know, like contexts are essentially like little walkie-talkies where people get a feed of the sound.
Right. I give them a dirty feed from the audio department, and a Comtech is something that is like... It's a ubiquitous term like Band-Aid or Q-tip. Even if it's not a Comtech brand, they still want... But they like Comtechs, and they come in pink and blue, and you can drop them in the curb, or you can leave them in bushes, and you don't feel like, oh my God, that is happening to my audio gear. So it's something made to be kicked around.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Have there been any, film sets that you've been on where you really just didn't get along with, the rest of the crew, or you really had a tough time? I mean, I've certainly had some situations like this. I'm sure you probably have, Mark.
Gosh.
It seems pretty common.
I guess I really have been lucky. I get treated with an awful lot of respect and care, and I've never really had any set twos or any disagreements. I'm a really easy, flexible person. I like them to understand if we're not getting what they need, my job is to let them know, and then they make the decision on what we're going to do. I'm not going to fight for audio they might not use. Sure. They have the edit in their head, so I get along with everybody. I mean, as a matter of fact, I prefer an ego because I want to just follow them. I'll follow what you need. I haven't really even ever had anybody be rude to me. I've been teased a little bit, but that's always been in good nature, but never had any set twos. I feel fortunate. I've heard those stories.
Oh, it seems like film sets are very volatile. And
they're a rife place for just, stress and stresses between people. And
there have been, and I see it happen from my cart, and I'm real careful. When I have discussions with people, I have what's always a one-on-one, quiet tone of breath sort of discussion. But I just feel lucky. Maybe I haven't been on big enough shoots yet, so I've been on a few, but not not enough.
I like that idea of being able to sit sort of off and watch what's going on, and like you said, just insert yourself whenever you're needed, but sort of stay back and just be able to take in what's going on.
It's such a great vantage point. And to listen to. Very many times people don't. Gosh, they're not aware. I tell them, all right, I've got you wired. Your microphone is currently off. And I turn it off and on with my phone, so I don't have to go into their clothing and stuff like that. But sometimes I'll be like, okay, your microphone's on. Let me know if you need to, leave the room or use the restroom or something. We'll make sure it's off. But, I'll put on my cans and start making adjustments. I realize I'm hearing some really crazy stuff in a conversation or on the phone on the edge of the property. And I'm like, oh, man. what do I do?
It drives me nuts when
Yeah.
we're rolling and I can hear like a PA or someone, chatting in another room, and that people don't realize just how sensitive these mics are. It's one of my biggest
no
pet
doubt.
peeves.
But no, I feel very fortunate. I think one of my big skills, one of my greatest skills, and one of the skills I pride myself on is getting along with everybody. So, and I can, I feel empathetic. I feel it when people are getting wound up, So I can sympathize with people good too.
Definitely. So what's it like? Just some of the basics of setting up, microphones, is wiring people up, and talk about that a little bit. What's it like to, you got to sort of be in, under people's shirts and and clipping things on. What's that experience
I'm
like?
comfortable with it, even though it's probably the most awkward part of my job. But I have tools, like I have a little what is it, the Sound Guys Solutions lav bullet, or I can plug my lav heads in. It's like a bullet. It looks like a bullet, and I warm it first. Like I put it right in my waistband and warm it. But you can there are tools to just drop the tail down, but I don't really like wiring people. Having a microphone acoustically mounted to anything is always asking for troubled sound. So keeping them quiet using wireless is just part of our job now, and it's just ubiquitous. But man, whenever I can, I say use the boom. Use the boom. The boom is going to be your go-to here. Rely on the wireless if you need to. There was a job where the boom I couldn't get the boom in close enough. The wind was howling. I couldn't hear it on any of my wireless or my shotgun, but they were just so wide. I'm like, don't use the boom. Use the wireless. They're going to be your go-to. But wiring is always just careful. Like when you get into the more high-end actors and actresses, they're just like, nobody cares, People that are new are like, oh, okay. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to reach up your clothes, or can I get in there again? I mean, being female, it's much easier. Most people are like, oh, and the guys will be like, hey, no problem. I'm enjoying it. You'll hear comments like, I'm enjoying it. No problem, or whatever. But it's like one of those things where you just have to get in there and get out and know what you need to do and know what's making the noise and not be fiddling with it. Very often you'll be like, what is the noise? Is the noise a noise next to the microphone? Is the noise on the microphone? So, and figure out some noises you're just not going to get out because the microphone is hearing it. Noise is happening over here. And it's
wardrobe or something.
It's just
like
wardrobe
that,
making noise on skin or hair or its own self. And you're not going to be able to get it out. And
what do you do in a situation like that if it's a very wide shot, your boom isn't as close as it needs to be, and you realize their lav is rustling around there? Do you interrupt the take? Or?
You bet. You wait till the first break and go get that and say, hey, I have to make an adjustment, and I've got to get this right because the boom isn't getting us what we need. And they're usually like, oh, no, go right ahead, go, Rachel. And I have a bunch of little fabrics and tricks and things that I tape and suspend, or I have a bunch of little things that I make things, And also Bumblebee is really good. They have the Bumblebee products, or they work on fabrics that are quiet. They work on finding those things.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. Are you nervous when you're starting on a job, or at the beginning, not just getting to know people, or is it just kind of like, I've done this a million times, it's fine? Or
I'm nervous every time. I want to get it right, and I'm going over checklists in my head. I'm going over making sure I've got redundant backups for everything, And yeah, I'm nervous until about probably the fifth or sixth take, and then I can just settle in and go, okay, I got the rhythm of this. These things are working, or I'm off to solve problems. But yeah, the night before, the day before, it ratchets up to like a peak, and that it starts to taper off about the fifth or the sixth take or whatever we're doing.
Yeah, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I get that feeling pretty much on every shoot myself.
Yeah, every shoot, because you just, there's always like personalities, there's gear, there's weather, there's ambient noise problems, there's a bunch of stressors, and you just got to see what you're going to be working in.
Mm-hmm. So when you're watching films, are you constantly... well, first of all, do you enjoy watching films?
I don't. I enjoy watching films. That's the terrible part of it is I don't. I watch them technically, and I try to get it out and go, okay, suspend your disbelief. And I'm not good at suspending my disbelief. And it got worse after film school. So I watch technically, probably like a lot of us do. I also, since I was in theater, I watch characters, and I hate it when characters do things that contradict their character from earlier, just to wrap up a plot, resolve a plot issue. They're just going to be nice. The bad guy is just going to suddenly do something extremely benevolent. That bothers me. But so I know. But
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, actually, Mark and I were talking about this yesterday. Just characters not acting how you think that they would act. So we had an argument about this. Not an argument.
He wouldn't have done that.
Had the argument.
Yes,
Yeah,
he wouldn't
exactly.
Why did he do that? That's awful. Yeah. But no, one of the things is I really watched lately is the decisions made by the boom op or the mixer as the camera moves in on a subject, tighter and tighter and tighter. Are they taking the opportunity to move that mic in with it, or do they stop at a certain point? Or is there an aesthetic call that's made and they don't stop and they want to hear the breath and the whispering? Or are you in far enough? Because I'm picking that apart, because what happens as you move a shotgun in, or even a super hypercardioid in, the signal to noise ratio gets better. The voice gets hotter, and if there's any kind of background air or street or whatever, that's going to get quieter. So I'm always like, how is a re-recording mixer going to deal with this? Because you get the wide shot, but they've got the wireless. If they have to use it, they'll use that wireless. But then now I'm going to go into our medium shots where I'm getting a good signal-to-noise ratio. We're going to go in a little tighter. Should I stay with that signal-to-noise ratio? I might go in a little bit more, but then when they go in tighter, I'm staying there, because unless they're going to try in the sound design, like I have to read the script and see, like, are they trying to isolate this fellow by doing that? Mm-hmm. And do we want the audio to follow that? You know, so you have to.
Do you ever get notes from the post department after a film, or can you ever get a sense of what tracks they ended up using, like when you watch the final project?
Never do. Occasionally I'll get a call back, like, what mic did you use here? Because we're going to have to do a little ADR, and I'll be like, oh, I bet that was the park scene, or, you know. No, I wish they would double back with me more. I would like to hear more constructive criticism. Like, don't do this, don't do that. We'd like it if you wouldn't do this, or we'd like, I don't get offended. That, to me, that's all just an opportunity to improve my craft.
Right. I imagine though they're probably using the boom mic, the boom track for most things.
Yeah.
I'm always kind of curious how often wires end up used in a final mix.
So
yeah,
I think
me too.
It probably depends on what it is, right? Because
Yeah.
like reality TV,
Oh, of
now
course, that's all
everyone's
right.
wired.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, there was one job I did for it was BBC Holiday. Oh no, wasn't Holiday. It was a Katrina job, a Hurricane Katrina job, where we went into like the Jefferson Parish to get the EOC commander. Is this big guy with kind of jowly and wearing a tight, and I put the lav here and I put the boom there and put the lav on the right and the boom on the left, and I figured it in post he's going to know that all that scratchy stuff from his whiskers is just useless. Don't use. Man, I got a DVD, which I rarely get, and I listened to it, and there was a scratchiness on the left and there was a boom on the right. And
oh no.
they were rushing to post. So in this job, they were trying to get you have to figure what kind of hurry they're even in. Sometimes you have to think, if they're in a real hurry, they might miss and just throw this down the way it is. So I have to really be careful and think about how my tracks might be used, and ask them, are you guys going right to post, or make the notes in the log, don't use this track.
Yeah.
Double up the boom, and, don't use but it wasn't too bad, but that was a big eye-opener.
You're playing mind reader too. So
Yeah.
you got a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
Technician and artist and mind reader and all
Yeah,
of these things.
and you have to vibe on people, and then you have to imagine how they're going to use this in the post, or what kind of hurry they're in. There's so much discussion that could be had that usually doesn't.
Yeah, there was an instance. There was one film where I boom opped. I never boom op. I'm not a boom op. I've done it on my own projects, and afterwards I heard. I heard the sound, and I was like, oh my gosh, my. And I was mixing too, and I was like, this is the worst. This is the worst audio. And Mark was involved in the project too. And afterwards I said, hey, do you have those files? I got to listen to that. and the files were fine, but they
butchered it.
They just did so much sound reduction and just compressed it.
Oh, they went in and post.
It was so unnecessary. It wasn't handled properly.
Okay,
I
so
think they had the right
EQ'd
idea.
and they
the right
compressed
idea.
and they.
Yeah.
Oh, what was the original malady? You just were too much space between the.
No, I think it was fine.
It was perfectly
Oh,
fine.
you were just hearing
it
the-
is.
Mine was fine.
Oh,
yeah, I
you
did
listened
the work
to the original
fine.
tracks and they were just fine.
Yeah.
So I listened to the tracks and they were great, but
Oh no! When you give good work and then they end up, that's the other way around. See, that's a fear I don't think of. I'm always, like my fear is I'm going to give them awful tracks and they're going to have to, and they'll clean it up and fix it. But
the problem is I was like, I don't, please take my name off that. 'Cause I don't do that bad of work, So
you just never know who you're handing your work
yeah.
to.
I had another situation which was awful where I was DPing a film and there was no sound mixer, and this is a crazy story, but I said, hey, I will monitor, like I'll just put some headphones on just to make sure there's audio coming in, but I'm not the sound mixer, I'm not riding levels, I'm doing nothing, I just want to know that there's sound coming in for you, and afterwards the guy credited me as sound mixer.
Oh my god!
And
wow. What were you guys going straight into the camera with a wireless or something? Or
no, it was like a boom into. It was a really really low budget, so it was going into a Beach Tech.
Oh, okay.
Beach Tech box straight into camera.
Sure.
It was shot on like a 5D, and it was so maddening because I didn't actually do the work, and it didn't sound as good as I would have tried to make it, because I'm not watching like the boom and writing the levels and all this. So
While you're operating,
it ended up being a really difficult situation because the director was like, "No, I'm not changing it. You said you were monitoring sound." I was like,
awesome.
"No,
Good. Take it because there's going to be enough jobs you won't get credit for.
Yeah. So anyway, I eventually got him to change it, but it was a struggle. So that's always a bad situation where you deliver good work and
Yeah, and they butcher it. No, I don't know. I've been lucky that way too. I think that was I don't know because I don't get you never know. The sound just goes off and you never hear it again.
yeah.
Who knows? Maybe more of it's been butchered than I care to.
Yeah. Do you seek out those projects once you realize, oh, those are released?
Yeah, I do. Like if it's in a prominent place and I don't have to pay for it. I'm one of those old school people. I don't buy television. I don't even watch much television. So I don't like having Netflix or I seek out clips on YouTube and I listen to them, but if I can, yeah, I've some PBS stuff I went looking for that I did. I was really pleased about that. But not that often. I usually trust that they hired good hands to do it. They're going to hire good hands to take care of the post. So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
how do you do you do a lot of like reading or research about new techniques, new gear, or do you talk to people on set, or how do you learn about sort of the progression of the industry?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, I read every day. And I'm always trying to. I don't even try. It's just intriguing to me. So I fall into it and I realize I've been reading about some new gear for 2 hours, So yeah, an awful lot of reading, and I talk to people. JW Sound is also a great place, like to post my experiences and to get feedback. So
That's an online forum.
Yeah, JW Sound is Jeff Wexler's. It used to be Ramps, which was in the old days of the internet was RAMPS, period after each one, recording arts, motion, picture, sound, was how you categorize bulletin boards in the old days. So the Ramps crew was like all of our sound ancestors and our friends that are still working in it that have so much to teach us. And about the time I started really getting into the business, Jeff moved it to this website that he's at now.
It's a great resource.
Yeah.
I'm a constant lurker on it, occasional poster, and it's great.
Right.
Same
right.
here. Yeah, it's been great. I've learned so many things just reading on there. So.
I get lost there, and I'm trying to read the whole thing, but it just keeps growing. So I go away from it for a few months, and then I'm back reading a lot, and I kind of branch off from there and find myself over at Lectrosonics or other places. I don't really go to the what is it? Gear Slut? What's the other big one?
Oh, yeah.
Gear Sluts.
Gear
I think.
Sluts.
Gear Sluts, and there's a few others, but I like the tonality of JW Sound. It's like it's high end, really respectful. You can seriously get reprimanded. He doesn't tolerate any trolling or any of that stuff. I think it's a really high class place.
Yeah,
High
it's all mostly professional sound mixers, so it's good. A lot
Right.
of good, really solid information.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's been good. So I asked earlier, what are some of the projects you've been working on, and what's exciting you about sound mixing these days?
Well, my big project is I think Soundy's like at least the DIY thread on JW Sound. The group of us there love building our own. So my project is my movie cart. So I've got a whole bunch of aluminum stock, and I've got my bag cart, and I'm slowly building it into my movie cart. It's gonna have a Mac on it. I'm gonna have boom op, a boom recorder, and a whole bunch of. I'm just slowly building it into the thing that I'm going to be using when I retire.
Okay, yeah.
So that's my big thing. Also, I'm working other projects that are just sort of not movie related. I'm trying to turbocharge a tennis racket bug zapper with a high capacity cap that I went on Alibaba, or actually I think it was DigiKey, and I bought 10 of those. And there is a local cheap tool company that sells them for $3 a piece. And I want to hit it, and I want to see a fireball. So I figured out which capacitor it was. I recently took it from 6 volts to 9 volts with a 9-volt battery, but I slowly blew out a resistor by holding the momentary power switch on.
So do you have to hold the power switch as it hits the bug?
As it hits or right before it. And I was walking around kind of just with it on, and I slowly cooked the circuit. But I bought like 5 or 6 of them, so...
do you just enjoy zapping on your free time, or do you live in an area where they're constantly...
There's a lot of mosquitoes.
Okay, I would hope
There's
that would be the
bats
reason.
And mosquitoes. And I weed in my yard in the evenings, but... I stay creative with all kinds of little projects, but
Well, that's great. That's the first time I've heard of someone building like an intense bug zapper. So right now, is there like a small explosion?
There's a little tiny explosion, a little tiny one. But when I took the double A's out of it and I went to a 9-volt lead and snapped the 9, it lasted long enough to where I was like, oh, this could be something, Let me just take the circuit apart. There's only 15 components in the whole circuit, resistors and capacitors and transistors. So it was a matter of just sussing out what's doing the real action.
Yeah.
These little buggers are a nuisance. I'm
Yeah,
all
they
about
are.
this.
They're fun.
Yeah,
I'll let you guys know when I get
please.
it done.
We were dealing with some insects
You can beta test them.
yesterday.
Beta test one.
Yeah.
Oh, it'd be great. We ended up throwing I think a 20-pound... I shouldn't even be talking about
No,
this.
we killed a roach in your place with a sandbag.
It's like a 20-pound sandbag. It was
We
crawling over-
repeatedly threw it at it like 5 times in the corner.
I don't advocate for the violence or the harming of animals or creatures, but this was a
I do for the
particularly
roach. I mean, it was a
buggy
huge
bastard.
roach.
Yeah,
If he's
yeah.
inside, was he inside?
inside.
Oh, yeah,
No,
yeah.
that's where I draw the line.
I would leave it alone if it's outside.
Outside, spiders and stuff, that's their area.
Yeah.
But once they come inside, no, I pay for this space. So
They're not paying rent.
Right, they're not paying rent. And, you got to find a creative way to do them all.
Yeah, maybe if they drag a dollar bill in or something and leave it there and continue on,
If there was rent.
it'd be more acceptable for them to stay.
I think I'd still draw the line. And not that I'm into. I love entomology. Bugs are cool, and I have this recording of the Florida brown widow I found at a bus stop I was sitting at. I was just lucky. I saw a big Florida brown widow right about where you put your arm. So I videotaped it and I show people, and I like the bugs in my yard. And I visit bug sites, and they're all about unnecessary carnage. They call it. It's really a term.
Huh.
Don't kill bugs that you don't need to kill. But
Unnecessary carnage.
yeah, so they would not probably like my bug zapper.
Yeah. Well,
Because I'm going to go outside and use it.
Yeah. People should talk about unnecessary carnage on film sets. Please don't make any unnecessary
Do they?
carnage. They should.
Is that a term? That could be a
There's not,
term.
but there should be. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's a difficult situation.
terms,
So
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna just ask as well. So Joseph and I are always concerned about, acquiring high quality sound on projects we direct. If a director came to you and volunteered their time and their interest and say, "Hey, Rachel, what can we do for you to get the best recording possible?" Are there certain things that you can offer them that
My first thing is, can I just let me location scout with you? Let me go with you on your location scouting and talk to you about what I hear. And I'll bring out my mix pre and my boom. That's what I do. I wander around like somebody, like a CIA person with a bug sniffer, and then I'll give them the cans and go, listen to this cooler. Holy crap, really? Wow, yeah, that would get all in your audio, So location scouting is one. Actively picking things that aren't in the line of air traffic, of landing and taking off. It's hard to do that these days, but stuff like that, letting me know ahead of time if there is an air handler or a big HVAC unit that we can't quiet, so I can come in thinking, like walk on thinking about what, we're going to do about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really about the preparation.
More prep and letting me know what we're doing, what we're headed into.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's great.
and thinking about sound when they're scouting if I can't be there.
Yeah, definitely. That's good. That's great. Well, Rachel, where can people find information about you? Or I don't know if
RachelCameron.com.
RachelCameron.com.
I have let my website go into neglect, so I'm working with my web designer right now to get it. It won't load on a cell phone. That's how old it is. But RachelCameron.com on any computer for now, and you can contact me through there, and you can read about me. And I need to update my gear list on there, but there's a photo gallery too. But probably I'll be doing away with that because it doesn't do much.
Sure. Yeah. Great. Well, encourage people to go check it out.
Or you can find me at JW Sound. Contact me through there.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good
Thanks
stuff.
so much for stopping by, Rachel. Really
you,
had a
guys.
great time chatting with you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot.
It was awesome.
Great. So, everyone out there, this has been another episode of the Skeleton Crew podcast where we feature discussions with prominent key crew members. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, all your podcast channels. Go like, follow, subscribe, all of that. YouTube as well, actually. And leave us a review. That helps us out. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much.
If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. You can find links and information about our guests in the show notes or description below. Music by Ian Kreider. To contact us, please visit SkeletonCrewPodcast.com. Thanks for listening.